We are still continuing with our topic on the 7 key drivers of enterprise competitiveness. In our last 2 sessions, we covered the first, which was productivity levels and efficiencies, where we learned that businesses remain small and constricted when their production levels are low. They are not able to take advantage of the innovation and technology to exploit opportunities and to get into the market and market segments. And this week, we cover the second key driver of enterprise competitiveness, which is skills and qualifications. We look forward to receiving your feedback through our email, info@tapmedia.com, and our social media handles. Enjoy!
Often in these sessions, I take a long winding road, even if I know there are some shortcuts I could use, but I take this long-winded way so that we can make a point to the listener and those who regularly tune into the various online channels so that they get a better understanding of Uganda and African context. For we have, as Africans, some unique situations in business given the nature and stature of our economy today. Now, if we define skill and qualification of workers, these are the two items we're handling today. This is our second point in the 7 competitive drivers that last week we mentioned one, this is the second one. So if we define skill and qualification of workers as a driver of competitiveness in business, then surely we should understand where Uganda and Africa have come from in the last 100 years. Now, Marx and Engels, those of you who remember these days people no longer read the Communist Manifesto, but this was, recommended reading when I was at university in my first and second year. So Marx and Engels, in their Communist Manifesto, which they published on February 21, 1848, some 163 years ago, which is not a long time ago, at the peak of the Industrial Revolution in Europe, they said in this book, and I quote, "The bourgeois," and when I say the bourgeois, we mean the entrepreneurs, "the bourgeois cannot exist without constantly revolutionizing the instruments of production." When I say instruments of production, they mean technology, science, which produces the much needed skill for a business to compete. So they said the instruments of production, and thereby by improving the instruments of production, they improve the relations of production. Now, relations of production is how various classes in society respond to these triggers, to these changes, how they form and shape with them, how various components of society relate with these changes in the means and tools of production. And then they say these changes also change the whole relations of society. This means socioeconomic change that is created by various improvements in the way society reproduces its material forms of existence, its products, its services, and how it lives at particular points in time. Now, these two writers add, and I keep the quotation, that the bourgeois, during its rule of scarcely 100 years, now Marx and Engels are talking about 100 years prior 1840s, so they're talking about 1730s, that the bourgeois during its rule, which was scarcely at their time, only 100 years, the bourgeois has created massive and colossal productive forces than all the preceding generations put together. Now they mean, those of you who read the Bible, the Babylonian times, which is about 2,000 years, 2,500 before Christ, then the Persians, then the Greeks, then the Romans, then the empires of Europe. These two writers, Marx and Engels, say that in only 100 years, The bourgeois, the entrepreneurs like you and me listening, like you young person who thinks that you are doing a normal thing, but when you are running a business, you are in this category, that the work they had done in 100 years was more than all the preceding generations' work put together, because they did the subjection of nature's forces to man. Nature, which was untamed, man in 100 years was able to seriously bring it into control. They brought machinery, now not using muscle and sweat, but using equipment. They applied, these are bourgeois, these are entrepreneurs. They began the application of chemistry to industry and agriculture. They brought about the creation of the steam navigation. They started railways. They began electric telegraphs. They cleared whole continents for cultivation. They channeled and did canalization of rivers so that they can irrigate dry lands. Whole populations were conjured out of the ground. Now, all these things, the earlier century didn't even have a presentiment that such huge productive forces slumbered or lay in the lap of the social labor, of the skilled worker, close quote. In this long quotation, and my paraphrasing some of the things in that quotation, Marx and Engels are talking about the role of skill and qualification triggered by a business person's search for profit. For any given society to move from its pre-industrial state, that society has to be largely driven by an entrepreneur in order for it to be ushered into a modern society. Now, we know skills and qualifications are based on education and training. The two twin things that happen at an institutional level, so say at a university or college or technical institution, and also inside the existing business, like the business we have at Thomas's farm. We have people who were fencing in a particular way using handheld tool. Now they have changed the way they fence because someone has retooled their thinking on how this should be done. So inside the business, there's the retooling of the people in order that you can make the business competitive, in order you can make the quality of labor in the business competitive. Now, the limited skills, which me as Audrey I have in business, because I know they are limited, they are all self-taught. My ability to continue to grow is based on my personal reading and application of the few of the principles that I have learned on my own. So has it been for centuries, because one generation passes on a practical skill to another. Learning and skilling, therefore, is a lifelong process for the individual and for the business. The reason, when one perfects what they do, they make the business very competitive. Therefore, it isn't really in the numbers. So it would be good to have your 400 people trained, skilled at a high level to produce the goods and services you set out to do. But I want to assure you listening to me that it isn't in the numbers, but it is more in the various improved ways of doing things. Don't think innovation, skill, competitiveness is throwing out everything and starting afresh. It is the iterations we make every day, and we improve the way of doing things that eventually make us competitive. If a skill is the learned ability to perform a task with determined results, you set your target as results, you execute that task within a well-given set of available resources, such as the amount of time, the amount of energy, the level of finance. If these are the elements that define a skill, I want to ask the question, where was Africa and Uganda in particular standing at the beginning of the 20th century? Why do I go back into history? Because history is the raw material we have that gives us context as business people today to understand and project where our enterprises and our country should be in 2050, 29 years ahead. 29 years ago, 1992, I was in university. 29 years later, I will be here, God willing. So if you project a skill and get your history right, you can understand what to do in the field of skilling your people in order to make our businesses competitive at a global level.
We would like to hear from you. Please email us at info@tapmedia.com and visit our website at www.tapmedia.com. You can also visit our offices located at Tomosi Business Park, Luzira, Port Bell Road, or call 0414 220 702. Thank you.